The Improbable Ape, A Journey Through the Astronomical Odds of Human Existence, by Rob Corley. Written and produced by Rob Corley. The Co-Evolutionary Dance. Consciousness alone wasn't enough to transform our species from small bands of hunter-gatherers into the dominant force on Earth. That transformation required another revolution, one that would fundamentally alter our relationship with the natural world and set us on the path to civilization. It was a revolution that began with a simple act, planting a seed and choosing not to eat it. But this wasn't just a story of human ingenuity conquering nature. It was something far more complex and beautiful, a co-evolutionary dance between humans and other species that transformed all the participants. We didn't just domesticate plants and animals, they domesticated us right back, reshaping our bodies, our societies, and our destinies in ways we're only beginning to understand. This is the story of how we became partners with other species in the most improbable biological collaboration in Earth's history. A partnership that created civilization, but also set us on a trajectory that would eventually threaten the very web of life that made our existence possible. Before the revolution. Picture the world 12,000 years ago, before the first seed was deliberately planted. Bands of humans moved through wild landscapes like ghosts, leaving barely a trace of their passage. They were nomads by necessity, following herds across vast territories, reading the subtle signs of seasons and weather, living entirely at the mercy of natural abundance. There were no farms, no barns, no grain silos. Dinner wasn't planned. It was found, sometimes caught, sometimes chased, until lungs burned and legs gave out. Every day was a gamble against hunger, weather, and predators that saw humans as just another item on the menu. These hunter-gatherers possessed intimate knowledge of their environments that would shame most modern naturalists. They knew which plants were edible and when, which animals could be hunted and how, which weather patterns meant feast or famine. Their survival depended on reading the natural world like a complex text written in the language of seasons, migrations, and ecological relationships. It was a hard life, brutal in many ways, but it was also strangely free. Hunter-gatherers worked fewer hours than modern farmers, had more leisure time, and enjoyed remarkably egalitarian societies. They knew the stars by name because they slept under them. They understood the rhythms of the natural world because their lives depended on it. Then, somewhere around 10,000 years ago, everything changed. Someone dropped a seed and didn't eat it. That single act of delayed gratification would rewrite the human story and transform the planet itself. The agricultural gamble. The agricultural revolution wasn't a moment of sudden inspiration. It was a slow-motion transformation that unfolded over thousands of years, built from countless small decisions and unintended consequences. The shift from hunting and gathering to farming didn't happen because someone invented agriculture. It happened because changing climate conditions and growing populations created pressures that made settled life increasingly attractive. Around 11,700 years ago, the last ice age ended, and the climate stabilized into the warm, predictable patterns of the Holocene. This climatic stability created conditions where wild grasses could flourish in dense stands, making it worthwhile for humans to stay in one place and tend them rather than constantly moving in search of food. The revolution began independently in at least 7 different regions around the world: the Fertile Crescent of the Middle East, the Yellow and Yangtze River valleys of China, the highlands of New Guinea, the Andes and Amazonia of South America, the eastern United States, Mesoamerica, and sub-Saharan Africa. Each region developed its own suite of domesticated crops adapted to local conditions. In the Fertile Crescent, wild grasses like emmer and einkorn wheat were gradually transformed into the high-yielding cereals that would feed civilizations. In East Asia, wild rice was coaxed from wetlands into paddies. In Mesoamerica, a scraggly grass called teosinte was transformed through patient selection into maize, a transformation so dramatic that early botanists couldn't believe the two plants were related. But this wasn't just humans reshaping plants. The plants were reshaping humans right back. The decision to settle down and tend crops triggered a cascade of biological and social changes that would define the human future. The biological transformation. Agriculture didn't just change what humans ate, it changed what humans were. The shift from a diverse hunter-gatherer diet to one dominated by a few staple crops had profound effects on human biology and health. Archaeological evidence shows that early farmers were shorter, less robust, and more prone to disease than their hunter-gatherer ancestors. Skeletons from early agricultural sites show increased rates of dental decay, anemia, and infectious diseases. The concentration of people in permanent settlements created ideal conditions for the spread of pathogens, while reliance on a narrow range of crops led to nutritional deficiencies. But agriculture also triggered evolutionary changes that helped humans adapt to their new lifestyle. The most famous example is lactose tolerance, the ability to digest milk into adulthood. This trait, which is rare among mammals, evolved independently in several human populations that practiced dairy farming. The ability to extract nutrition from milk provided a significant survival advantage, especially during times when crops failed. Other genetic adaptations followed. Populations that relied heavily on starchy crops like rice and potatoes evolved additional copies of the amylase gene, which produces enzymes for digesting starch. These changes happened remarkably quickly in evolutionary terms, within just a few thousand years, demonstrating the powerful selective pressures that agriculture created. The shift to agriculture also changed human social biology. Settled life allowed for the accumulation of possessions and the development of social hierarchies based on wealth rather than just age or skill. Women began having children more frequently, as the demands of nomadic life no longer limited family size. Population growth accelerated, creating the demographic foundation for complex societies. The plant partners. The transformation of wild plants into crops represents one of the most remarkable examples of co-evolution in natural history. Humans didn't just select plants with desirable traits, they fundamentally rewired plant biology to serve human needs. Take wheat, the foundation of Western civilization. Wild wheat has small seeds that shatter easily when ripe, scattering their contents to ensure reproduction. But early farmers selected for plants with larger seeds that stayed attached to the stalk, traits that made harvesting easier but left the plants completely dependent on humans for reproduction. Modern wheat literally cannot survive without human intervention. The transformation was mutual. As humans selected for larger, more nutritious seeds, they also had to develop new technologies for processing them. The invention of grinding stones, storage containers, and cooking techniques co-evolved with the crops themselves. Humans became as dependent on their crops as the crops were on them. This co-evolutionary relationship created what biologist Michael Pollan calls evolutionary bribes. Plants essentially bribed humans into spreading their genes by offering concentrated nutrition in exchange for care and protection. From the plant's perspective, domestication was an incredibly successful strategy. Wheat, rice, and corn are now among the most widespread and numerous plants on Earth. But the relationship came with costs for both partners. Crops became vulnerable to diseases and pests that could wipe out entire harvests. Humans became vulnerable to famines when their crops failed. The Irish potato famine of the 1840s, which killed over 1 million people, demonstrated the dangers of over-reliance on a single crop variety. The animal alliance. As plants came under human control, so too did animals. But animal domestication was even more selective and challenging than plant domestication. Of the world's 148 large terrestrial mammals, only 14 have ever been successfully domesticated. The requirements for domestication were stringent. Animals had to have a diet that humans could provide, grow quickly enough to be economically viable, breed readily in captivity, have a calm disposition, and possess a social structure that humans could exploit. Animals that were solitary, highly territorial, or had complex dietary needs simply couldn't be domesticated with ancient technologies. The successful domesticates, sheep, goats, pigs, cattle, horses, camels, llamas, and a few others, transformed human societies as much as crops did. Sheep and goats provided meat, milk, and fiber. Cattle pulled plows and provided transportation. Horses revolutionized warfare and communication. Pigs converted waste into protein with remarkable efficiency. But perhaps the most profound partnership was with dogs, humanity's first and most intimate domesticated animal. The relationship between humans and dogs began at least 15,000 years ago, possibly much earlier, when wolves began scavenging around human camps. Over thousands of generations, the friendliest wolves were fed and bred, eventually evolving into dogs. This partnership was transformative for both species. Dogs gained reliable food and protection. Humans gained hunting companions, guards, and emotional support. Recent research suggests that dogs co-evolved not just to work with humans, but to understand them in ways that even our closest primate relatives cannot. Dogs can read human gestures, follow pointing, and interpret facial expressions with remarkable accuracy. The human-dog partnership may have been crucial to our species' success. Archaeological evidence suggests that human populations with dogs had significant advantages in hunting and survival. Some researchers even speculate that dogs helped humans outcompete Neanderthals, who apparently never developed similar partnerships with wolves. The microbial metropolis. Beyond the visible partnerships with plants and animals lies an even more intimate co-evolutionary relationship, the one between humans and the trillions of microbes that inhabit our bodies. The human microbiome, the collection of bacteria, viruses, fungi, and other microorganisms that live in and on us, represents a hidden dimension of human biology that we're only beginning to understand. From the moment of birth, humans are colonized by microbes that become essential partners in digestion, immunity, and even behavior. These microscopic allies help break down food, synthesize vitamins, train the immune system, and protect against pathogens. Recent research suggests they may even influence mood, cognition, and personality through the gut-brain axis. The agricultural revolution dramatically altered the human microbiome. Hunter-gatherer populations have much more diverse gut bacteria than people in industrialized societies, reflecting their varied diets and constant exposure to environmental microbes. The shift to processed foods, widespread antibiotic use, and increased sanitation has led to what some researchers call a microbiome extinction crisis in developed countries. This loss of microbial diversity has been linked to rising rates of allergies, autoimmune diseases, and other health problems in industrialized societies. We may have gained protection from infectious diseases, but we've lost some of the beneficial microbes that co-evolved with us over millions of years. The geographic lottery. The success of agriculture wasn't just about human ingenuity or favorable climate. It was also about geographic luck. Some regions of the world were simply better suited for agricultural development than others, and these advantages would shape the course of human history. Jared Diamond's analysis in Guns, Germs and Steel shows how geographic factors determined which societies would develop agriculture first and most successfully. The Fertile Crescent had an unusual concentration of wild plants and animals suitable for domestication, a Mediterranean climate ideal for agriculture, and an east-west orientation that allowed crops to spread easily across similar latitudes. Other regions were less fortunate. Australia had no large mammals suitable for domestication, and few plants that could be turned into crops. The Americas were isolated from old-world diseases and domesticated animals until European contact. Sub-Saharan Africa faced challenges from tropical diseases and the tsetse fly, which made livestock farming difficult in many areas. These geographic differences created what Diamond calls the ultimate cause of inequality between human societies. Regions that developed agriculture early gained advantages in population size, technology, and military power that persisted for thousands of years. The head start provided by favorable geography continues to influence global patterns of wealth and power today. The price of partnership. The co-evolutionary dance between humans and other species created the foundation for civilization, but it also came with hidden costs that we're still paying today. Agriculture allowed human populations to grow exponentially, but it also made them more vulnerable to famines, diseases, and social inequality. The concentration of people in permanent settlements created ideal conditions for the spread of infectious diseases. Many of humanity's worst plagues, smallpox, measles, influenza, plague, originated from close contact with domesticated animals. These diseases became powerful weapons of conquest when agricultural societies encountered hunter-gatherer populations with no immunity to them. Agriculture also created the first significant wealth inequalities in human societies. Unlike hunter-gatherers, who had few possessions and shared resources communally, farmers could accumulate surpluses and pass them on to their children. This led to the emergence of social classes, professional armies, and centralized governments, the building blocks of complex civilizations, but also the sources of oppression and conflict. The environmental costs were equally significant. Agriculture required clearing forests, draining wetlands, and redirecting water sources. The first farmers began the process of environmental transformation that would eventually lead to the Anthropocene, the geological age defined by human impact on Earth's systems. The acceleration. Once the co-evolutionary dance began, it accelerated rapidly. Each innovation in agriculture or animal husbandry enabled larger populations, which created more opportunities for further innovation. The surplus food produced by agriculture freed some people from food production, allowing them to specialize in crafts, trade, warfare, or administration. This specialization led to technological advances that further increased agricultural productivity. The invention of the plough allowed farmers to cultivate larger areas. Irrigation systems brought water to previously unusable land. Selective breeding improved crop yields and animal productivity. The feedback loops between population growth, technological innovation, and agricultural intensification created what archaeologists call the Neolithic demographic transition. Human populations that had remained stable for thousands of years began growing exponentially, setting the stage for the rise of cities, states, and civilizations. But this acceleration also created new vulnerabilities. As societies became more complex and interdependent, they became more fragile. Crop failures, disease outbreaks, or climate changes that would have been manageable for small hunter-gatherer bands could now cause the collapse of entire civilizations. The modern inheritance. The co-evolutionary relationships that began with the agricultural revolution continue to shape human life today. Modern agriculture still depends on the same basic crops that were domesticated thousands of years ago. Wheat, rice, corn, and potatoes provide most of the world's calories. Our bodies still carry the genetic adaptations that evolved in response to agricultural diets. But the scale and intensity of these relationships have changed dramatically. Industrial agriculture has created crop varieties with unprecedented yields, but also unprecedented vulnerability to pests and diseases. The green revolution of the 20th century fed billions of people, but also created dependence on fossil fuels, synthetic fertilizers, and pesticides. Our relationships with animals have become similarly industrialized. Factory farming produces meat, milk, and eggs at scales unimaginable to early farmers, but it also creates conditions for the emergence of new diseases and contributes to environmental degradation. Even our microbial partners have been affected by modern life. The widespread use of antibiotics, processed foods, and sanitizers has dramatically altered the human microbiome, with consequences we're only beginning to understand. The future of the dance. As we face the challenges of the 21st century, climate change, biodiversity loss, emerging diseases, and food security, understanding our co-evolutionary relationships becomes more important than ever. The same partnerships that enabled the rise of civilization may hold the keys to its survival. Scientists are exploring how traditional agricultural knowledge can be combined with modern technology to create more sustainable farming systems. Researchers are investigating how restoring microbial diversity might improve human health. Conservation biologists are working to preserve the wild relatives of crop plants that may be crucial for future food security. The co-evolutionary dance that began 10,000 years ago is far from over. As we develop new technologies like genetic engineering, synthetic biology, and artificial intelligence, we're creating new forms of partnership with other species and even with machines. The choices we make about these relationships will determine not just our own future, but the future of life on Earth. Lessons from the dance. The story of human co-evolution with other species teaches us several crucial lessons about our place in the natural world. We are not separate from nature, we are part of it. The idea that humans exist outside of or above the natural world is a dangerous illusion. Our bodies, our societies, and our technologies are all products of co-evolutionary relationships with other species. Partnership, not domination, drives evolution. The most successful relationships between humans and other species have been partnerships where both sides benefit. Attempts to completely dominate other species often backfire, creating vulnerabilities and unintended consequences. Diversity is strength. The most resilient agricultural systems, the healthiest human populations, and the most stable ecosystems are those with the greatest diversity. Monocultures, whether of crops, animals, or ideas, are inherently fragile. Change is constant. Co-evolutionary relationships are dynamic, constantly shifting in response to new pressures and opportunities. What worked in the past may not work in the future, requiring constant adaptation and innovation. Unintended consequences are inevitable. Every major change in human-nature relationships has produced unexpected results. The challenge is to anticipate and manage these consequences rather than ignore them. The improbable partnership. When we step back and consider the full scope of human co-evolution with other species, the improbability of our existence becomes even more staggering. Not only did we survive the cosmic and biological filters that eliminated most potential life, but we also managed to forge partnerships with other species that transformed us from just another African ape into the dominant force on the planet. These partnerships required an extraordinary series of coincidences and innovations. The right climate conditions had to emerge at the right time. The right species had to be available for domestication in the right places. Humans had to develop the cognitive abilities necessary to understand and manipulate biological systems. And all of this had to happen in a coordinated way that created positive feedback loops rather than destructive conflicts. The fact that it all came together to create the foundation for human civilization is perhaps the most improbable aspect of our entire story. We are not just the products of cosmic fine-tuning and biological evolution. We are the products of an intricate co-evolutionary dance that transformed multiple species simultaneously. But this dance also reminds us of our responsibilities. We are not the masters of nature, but its partners, dependent on relationships that took thousands of years to develop and could be destroyed in decades. The same co-evolutionary processes that created civilization could also destroy it, if we fail to understand and respect the partnerships that sustain us. The co-evolutionary dance continues today, but now we have the knowledge and power to influence its direction consciously. Whether we use this power wisely will determine not just our own fate, but the fate of all the species that have joined us in this improbable journey. The partnerships that made us human also made us responsible for the future of life on Earth. It's a responsibility we never asked for, but one we cannot escape. The dance goes on, and we must choose our steps carefully.